So we've kind of tailored this presentation to give you some basic information about who we are and what we do, and about Taproot Plus specifically. But if you already know all that, there'll be some new information here too about the skill sets that are underutilized typically for pro bono and skilled volunteerism that you might want to think about tapping into. So on a really broad level, here's what Taproot is, who we are, and what we do. Taproot was founded as a nonprofit in 2001 with the knowledge that there is obviously a massive resource gap present in the social sector, or the nonprofit, non-governmental sector. So organizations who may very well have solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges simply don't have the financial means or staff capacity to carry out their important missions to their fullest extent. So Taproot aims to democratize access to resources for nonprofits, regardless of their mission area, budget size, or years that they've actually been in operations. So that is who we are, and very broadly what we seek to do in the world. I know the things about the resource gap is probably preaching to the choir a little bit here, because you know very well that there are resource gaps in the industry that you work in. So I just want to give you all kind of a smattering of stats about our impact, and who we've been able to serve and what we've been able to do over the years. So we're obviously here to get nonprofits the business and consulting resources that they might need for free. And since the early 2000s, Taproot has been able to partner with over 10,000 social change organizations just like yours, and over 24,000 volunteers, totaling over 3 million in donated professional services. So we aim to forge hundreds of pro bono connections every week through Taproot Plus, which is our online marketplace, which is free to use for volunteers and nonprofits. I'll share a little bit more information about that in just a minute here. And in addition to Taproot Plus, we also have a branch of the Taproot Foundation known as Advisory Services, which partners with, corporate institutions and grant makers, foundations, and things like that, to host special events and convenings where skilled volunteers and nonprofits can get together. We used to do a lot of in-person events. We moved a lot of those, like a lot of organizations, into the virtual space. So these are things like pro bono marathons, where there's an all-day workshop where a team of skilled volunteers is matched with a nonprofit to complete a deliverable that they're going to work on through that whole day. Or things like speed consulting events. So our advisory services staff engage in that as well. If you do sign up to use Taproot Plus, you're automatically kind of put into a system. So if you are eligible for any one of those events at any time, sometimes they're restricted by geography or issue area of the nonprofit. We could actually maybe reach out to you, and you'll get an invite to one of those events to apply to be a nonprofit at one of those events as well. Through our advisory services practice and Taproot Plus, we aim to bring talented corporate employees directly to nonprofits kind of across our network. And again, Taproot ourselves is a nonprofit. We also use skilled volunteer support from the skilled volunteers, the pro bono consultants who do this work. So we drink our own Kool-Aid, so to speak. But this is just kind of a high level look at like what we do and the impact of our organization. But now I want to share a little bit of information about Taproot Plus, which I've already mentioned. Some of this might be old news to you if you've already signed up. But for those of you who are brand new to all of this, you'll see a banner up at the top, or a ribbon rather, of your screen that will let you know where you can sign up. But you can just go to taprootplus.org. So one of the biggest ways we achieve our mission is through this online marketplace. So we designed Taproot Plus to be flexible and nimble, so any nonprofit can get skilled volunteers no matter how big they are, and any kind of business professional or consultant can support the nonprofit no matter where they're located. And again, it is completely free to use as pursuant to our mission. So this is our way of scaling up the pro bono movement and making sure all of those who want to use pro bono or want to give services on a pro bono basis have a way to do so, regardless of geographic restrictions. Currently, Taproot Plus is open to nonprofits, public schools, and fiscally sponsored social good organizations across the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, all the EU countries, and India. And we have currently over 120,000 total users on Taproot Plus since we debuted this marketplace in 2014. There's no upper limit to the amount of staff members at your nonprofit who can have a Taproot Plus account. So, like I said, when we send out this recording, feel free to forward this information to other people on your team if you think they might be interested in using Taproot Plus as a resource. The only cost associated with our programs is the time and energy it takes to request and manage a skilled volunteer engagement. So there's no hidden fees anywhere or asterisk or small print that say there's a fee for posting or there's a subscription or anything like that. As pursuant to our mission, this is a free resource where you can link up with skilled business professionals who can help you engage on projects or consulting sessions, which I'm going to touch on right now. So there are two different ways or two different program types you can engage in on Taproot Plus. So these are called sessions and projects. So these are the two main offerings that you can go down on Taproot Plus and take advantage of. Really, really briefly, I just want to describe kind of the difference between these two things because it is important. Sessions are 1 hour, one-off calls that you can have with a subject matter expert. So a skilled volunteer who might have a background that you want to tap into, get some specialized information on. Again, these are 1 hour, one-off calls that you could pitch on our marketplace. These are great for diagnosing, brainstorming, troubleshooting. If you just really want to pick the brain of a subject matter expert about something you don't know about, sessions are really, really great for that. So if you have something that fits that model, you can pitch it as a session on our marketplace, and we'll start boosting that opportunity out to people who have the right skill set who can potentially help you. You can actually accept up to 5 skilled volunteers onto a single session. So, if you have a session with one volunteer but want to get a second opinion, you can keep that session open for other volunteers to take up, and we'll help you schedule that call with them. Projects, on the other hand, are a bit different. So projects are usually multi-week engagements with a skilled volunteer that are usually working towards some kind of deliverable or finished product. So you have some kind of end goal in mind, whether it's something like creating a social media content calendar for the first time, or coming up with a set of key messages, or maybe you need help from a financial expert to create your first budget or chart of accounts. Those are all the different types of things that you could potentially get assistance with on Taproot Plus in terms of projects. We facilitate pro bono in kind of 4 broad categories of skill sets. So marketing and communications, HR and leadership development, information technology, and business strategy and finance. So if you have any needs that could conceivably fall into one of those broader categories, it's a need that you could potentially bring into the Taproot Plus marketplace and find a partner for to help you tackle. So again, the difference between projects and sessions: projects are usually multi-week engagements. The exact amount of time is really dependent on you and your selected skilled volunteer who you're interested in partnering with. You all can come up with a timeline together, but usually they're anywhere from between 2 to 12 weeks on the higher end. And those are working towards some kind of finished project. Sessions are those kind of 1 hour, one-off calls. And I'll go into a little bit more information after we talk about underutilized skill sets on this marketplace, about how you can pitch a really good project, a really good session, when you get to that stage on your account where you're ready to pitch a session or a project. So now really on to the main kind of event, which is underutilized skills. So over our years of managing this marketplace where we have thousands of users, nonprofits and skill volunteers giving back, we've recognized that there are some skill sets, some professionals where, there's not as many nonprofits kind of clamoring to use their skill sets. And oftentimes this creates a phenomenon where we have a lot of skill volunteers kind of with one skill set or in one skill area that are just kind of waiting in the wings. So our goal today is really to encourage you to think about leveraging some of these lesser used skill sets, and encouraging you to think about different types of projects and sessions that might be, something that your organization could use or really benefit from. Nonprofit professionals, again, probably preaching to the choir here a little bit, often find themselves wearing multiple hats at an organization and are crunched for bandwidth with small staff sizes. So oftentimes the push to simply do the work can really overwhelm efforts without being able to step back, evaluate, strategize, and build new infrastructure for how you're going to do your work in the future. Nonprofits particularly don't think of using pro bono to overcome HR challenges. So for example, as the focus is always on things like program delivery, but investing in the people doing that work should definitely not be overlooked. Oftentimes, the most underutilized pro bono can also have the most far-reaching impact. So we really want to encourage you to think about tapping into these skill sets in particular, since if you do post an opportunity up on the marketplace that involves one or more of these skill sets, chances are you'll have a higher chance of actually finding a good candidate, a good match for that need. So I'd like to spend a lot of this presentation going over some examples of sessions and projects that tap into these underutilized skill sets, to give you an idea of, the types of things you can use these skill sets for. Hopefully you'll find at least one or more of these sessions or projects, helpful in thinking about, hey, I might actually want to do something like that. That's something that our organization might actually need. So like I said, we have a lot of people waiting in the wings, with these skill sets. So if you decide to post one of these types of needs to the marketplace, the chances are you'll have a better odds of finding a really, really good match for that session or project. So I want to start with sessions and talk about 4 sessions in particular that leverage underutilized skill sets on Taproot Plus. Sessions, again, are those 1-hour, one-off consultations where you can kind of pick the brain of a subject matter expert about kind of any given topic. And the first great use of a session I want to talk about is a survey design session. So evaluation generally is one of the skill sets we find is underutilized. And however, collecting data about your programming and its impact can go a very long way in figuring out ways to improve a program or make it more efficient, which is incredibly important if you are on a tight budget or, have a small staff size. However, a lot of nonprofit leaders need a lot of help when it comes to figuring out what types of questions will yield the best types of answers and the most useful kind of data. Believe it or not, survey design is not as intuitive as it might seem. And this is really a perfect way to get feedback from an evaluation expert with data collection experience. So spending an hour talking with them about a survey that you might already have that you want to optimize and get their advice on, or one that you're creating. So figuring out what types of questions to ask, how to pose those questions. Should you give them a metric to rate? Should you ask them a qualitative question? What's the best way to ask a question without getting, biased answers? These are all things that can actually make survey design much more complicated at first blush than it might seem at first blush. So think about survey design in the way you deliver your own programs. And if you're not taking any surveys for any other programs, then I highly, highly recommend thinking about doing so, as we'll see when we get into the project section of this presentation. Evaluating your own programs with regard to program design itself, surveys usually come in handy when you're trying to do that. So this is a great use of a potential session that taps into that evaluation and data analysis skill set that we see is sometimes underutilized on our marketplace. The second session I want you all to think about is a website design quick fix section or session. So oftentimes website design and user experience needs are usually tackled in multi-week projects, where people are kind of building new wireframes for a website. However, it can be really useful just to take an hour with a web designer who can give you their raw, first unfiltered impressions about your website and arm you with some suggestions for quick fixes you could make to the current layout or design of the website without completely overhauling your entire site. These can be really great for helping direct and plan larger web design and development projects that you might have coming up. You could even tap more than one skilled volunteer to do this and see if there's an overlap at any point in the issues that they raise. So like I said, you can engage up to 5 skilled volunteers per consultation session that you post. It never hurts to get a second opinion. And it could be interesting to see, if more than one volunteer focuses in on the same issue, then that's probably a red flag that you want to take that advice and change that. They also just might have some good ideas about the way you could change your layout, what should be surfaced at the top versus at the bottom. Again, so not a complete overhaul of your entire UX or UI on your website, but maybe you think, well, it's been a year or two since we had someone look at our design. I would just like to maybe get some pointers to make sure that our website is, looking as fresh and as optimized as possible. Again, these types of sessions can give you good ideas that can later turn into projects that you might want to bring to the marketplace as well. So website design and quick fixes, great way to leverage that website design skill set in a very nimble way without necessarily having to engage on a multi-week project where you have to invest a lot of time in overhauling the entire website. So tapping into that HR skill set a little bit, that is very, very underutilized, that I think would be good for people to use a lot more. A great session to think about is HR conversation coaching. So nonprofit leaders are very often thrust into the role of HR manager unofficially. Some of you are probably familiar with this. You're the executive director and the head of marketing and the person who runs payroll and does all the HR work as well. Like I said, preaching to the choir there. Without an HR background, it can be really difficult to conduct sensitive conversations with team members about performance or institutional changes coming down the pipeline that you want to make sure you get the messaging right on. So maybe you've been in the position before of needing to help an employee, volunteer, or board member better rise to the occasion or develop more in their position. How do you make sure that you're communicating concerns in a clear and constructive manner and setting good expectations that they can actually take back to their work? An HR professional can help you strategize on how to approach those types of sensitive conversations. So like I said, maybe you have an employee that you think could really, really improve what they're doing, or is it necessarily meeting their goals? There's a right way to have those conversations, and then there's not so right ways to have those conversations. There are HR professionals who do this kind of work and can kind of help you structure that conversation in a way that is actually going to be fruitful. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be frightening. So you might want to think about getting some advice from an HR professional about how to better coach staff members or board members or volunteers, since many of you probably deliver your programs, through volunteer support as well. So volunteers are part of your HR presence, along with board members. Sometimes that's not oftentimes thought of as being an HR type of need, but it definitely is. So the last, the final session I want to encourage you all to think about is also HR related. Not a surprise there. Again, one of our most underutilized skill areas is an onboarding checklist. So again, another HR challenge that sometimes gets overlooked, but is really, really critical, I think, to the success of your organization. New team members are often taking in a lot of information at once when they're coming into your organization and getting used to their new role and their new responsibilities. What seems really obvious and second nature for you and your other team members might be completely brand new information to them, and it's easy to overlook that. So what do they need to learn first, and what would help them learn it? Do you have important policies and procedures that employees have to follow with regard to beneficiaries? Maybe you work with really sensitive information about your client base or the people that you're serving, and there's compliance things that they absolutely have to know about. What's your workplace culture, and how would you help familiarize the new team member with that workplace culture? A question that oftentimes gets overlooked when you're onboarding new employees. Getting advice from an HR professional about how to organize and onboard an onboarding schedule, what to tackle first and in what order, can be really, really critical in properly onboarding a new team member so that they will be ready to do their job and contribute to achieving your mission. So again, this isn't something that's oftentimes very thought of, but the actual structure of how you onboard new team members is really, really important. So again, another great HR type of session that you could potentially engage in to enhance your HR profile a little bit here. So now I want to talk about 5 different types of projects that leverage under-tapped skills on Taproot Plus. So again, recall that projects are usually multi-week engagements where your skilled volunteer and you are working towards a kind of concrete deliverable more than just kind of getting advice. So as I go over these projects and their goals, I'll also give you the whys in terms of why these types of projects are important. Given that most Taproot Plus projects are one-on-one engagements, you'll probably need to focus your project around 1 or 2 of these whys that are most relevant to you. So I wanted to give you a lot of whys since we have a good amount of people on this call. So you might want to tackle these goals on a project-based way, emphasizing one of these whys. You can tackle really large goals and initiatives through projects with a single skilled volunteer. But to make sure the project size is reasonable for doing a one-on-one engagement, you might break the overall goal that you have down into more discrete projects that you tackle in sequence that make more sense for working one-on-one with a skilled volunteer. So for each one of these goals I go over, it might yield 2 or even 3 different types of projects tackling that overall goal. So pay close attention to the whys and think about, okay, I want to tackle this overall need and focus in on maybe 1 or 2 of these whys in the project that I want to use. And then, tackle the other whys in another project. So I'll give you an example of exactly kind of what I'm talking about here with our first type of project and the overall goal it could really help you achieve. So similarly to that survey design session that you could lead, a great type of project that taps into that underused evaluation and analysis skill set is conducting an information technology evaluation or audit. So the goal of a project like this would be to evaluate your information technology infrastructure to identify weaknesses, threats, and areas for optimization, improvement, and provide recommendations to implement, a plan for further improvements, or make the case for more budgetary support to actually implement those types of improvements down the road. So if we're talking about the whys of doing an IT evaluation audit or an IT evaluation or audit, there's several very good reasons as to why you might want to tackle a goal like this. The first is security assurance. So you'll want to protect very sensitive donor or client information you might be working with and reduce the risk of data breaches that could potentially harm your reputation. Another good reason to do this obviously has to do with compliance, ensure compliance with relevant laws and industry standards for data protection. So things like GDPR and HIPAA are very, very relevant for a lot of nonprofits. So that has to do with security assurance as well. The other good why is operational efficiency. You can identify and eliminate redundancies or identify software or hardware tech solutions to streamline operations, to cut cost and increase efficiency in program delivery. Another good why is risk management. So you can identify risks that could lead to data breaches or losses and create mitigation strategies for those situations so that you're not completely shocked and kind of coming up with a crisis plan if something like that happens. And then finally, confidence is a good reason to engage in this type of project. So increased confidence and commitment to transparency in both program beneficiaries, the people you serve, and external stakeholders. So your partners, your funders, the people who are, contributing resources to help you achieve your mission. This can go a long way in enhancing confidence for those people that you are partnering with. So again, if you're thinking about doing a project like this, you might want to create a project pitch for an IT evaluation project that focuses on security assurance and compliance, for example. Or maybe your IT evaluation project is going to focus on, making your operations more efficient. So again, think about the way you're going to focus your project down a little bit more into kind of one of these whys that happen under these overall goals. The next project I want to highlight is creating a volunteer management system. So like I said before, many nonprofits rely heavily on volunteers to deliver their missions. So this one is, I think, particularly prescient and important for nonprofits. And again, this is that underutilized skill set of HR. So why would you engage in creating a volunteer management system? There's a lot of good reasons you would do something like this. So the first is efficiency. You can eliminate manual time-consuming tasks, i.e. paper sign-up sheets, email chains, etc. That can help make your program running and more efficient. The second reason is having centralized information about your volunteers. Having a centralized database where all volunteer information, including contact details, skills, availability, and preferences, is stored for ease of access. It'll also help you enhance communication with your own volunteers. So you can communicate more effectively with volunteers through things like automated emails, text messages, or notifications that volunteer management systems oftentimes use to communicate, especially if you're working with a very, very large team of volunteers. Another good reason to do a project like this is to improve the volunteer experience overall, making it easier for volunteers to sign up, access important information, access training materials, or even event information, and just feel more supported by you as a nonprofit, which can help, retain good volunteers and make them want to work with you more. Another good reason, data evaluation and reporting. So tracking volunteer hours, measuring the impact that the volunteers have on your programming, identifying trends and, assessing the effectiveness of your recruitment and retention strategies can also be very helpful. And then finally, scalability, meaning accommodating larger numbers of volunteers and more complex operations as your organization grows. So maybe you have a program and you want to actually engage a lot more volunteers on it. So a good example of the type of project that you can come to the marketplace with to get help on would be, maybe you have a volunteer management software that you're using, but want to figure out how to leverage it more effectively to scale with expanding programs that you have. So maybe you've come into some funds that will allow you to get the premium version of that software that has a lot of expanded capabilities, and you want to create processes that'll actually integrate those capabilities into your current volunteer programs. Those are just some examples of, what you could focus on for a volunteer management system project, in terms of, giving you some kind of concrete examples of the directions you could go with something like this. And again, we are recording this presentation, so don't feel like you have to kind of feverishly write a lot of this down if some of these ideas strike you as good ones that you want to think about in the future. So while I'm kind of going over these whys, you might just want to kind of take in the information, and see what it's all about, because we will be sending this out again. So another type of project you could engage on is a performance management processes project. Helping your team members better do their job over time is really critical to the success of most nonprofits. If your team members aren't doing as well as they could do, how do they know that? How do you communicate that to them? How do you set clear expectations to help them improve or grow into better organizational leaders? Every team member should know how their daily tasks and activities go back to supporting the mission of the organization. So that's why it's important to do or implement some kind of performance management process, even if you are a small organization with a smaller staff size. It's important to start thinking about this because your organization might grow in the future, and you're going to want to have some kind of performance management system in place. So there's a lot of great whys as to why you would do this. And again, this is tapping into that underutilized HR skill set. So the first why is alignment, setting clear expectations and metrics that align employees' goals and activities with the organization's mission and strategic objectives. Another good reason is accountability. Employees better understand their roles and responsibilities and are accountable for their performance when you institute a performance management system. It also provides a basis for continuous improvement. So you're providing a framework for ongoing feedback that identifies areas for development and strategies for improvement in your employees or team members' daily activities and responsibilities. It also goes a long way in enhancing employee satisfaction. So if you're providing employees with clear expectations, regular feedback, and opportunities for growth and development, this enhances employee engagement and satisfaction, which leads into the next why, which is retention. Nonprofits are oftentimes affected by this issue in particular, where there's a lot of turnover. Implementing a performance management system provides employees with opportunities for growth, recognition, and advancement that increase retention and help develop organizational leaders at your organization. So you're not losing all that critical knowledge, if there's a lot of churn and turnover. Another good reason is to have data-based decision-making. So this helps you generate valuable data to make informed decisions about talent management, resource allocation, and overall organizational strategy. And then finally, risk management. This helps you ensure compliance with regulatory requirements related to performance evaluation, feedback, and employee development, and reduce the risk of decreased productivity, employee turnover, or actual damage to your reputation or brand. So those are all some really good reasons why you'd want to introduce some kind of performance management system. Getting more specific, maybe you want to focus this type of project around alignment and accountability, these first two whys. So an HR management professional could help you create a key performance indicator, or what we call KPIs dashboard, that helps all team members map their daily tasks and activities back to the larger strategic goals you've set as an organization, and ultimately back to the overall mission of the organization. So that's just an example of kind of how you could focus a performance management system project around one or two of these whys. And then this next one is actually one of my favorites, which is key messaging. It's one of my favorites because this one is often overlooked or taken for granted, but is really, really critical to get right. So you're really going to ask the question, is your storytelling responsive to its audience? You need to communicate differently depending on what type of stakeholder you're talking to. You're not going to talk about your mission to prospective volunteers the same way you're going to talk about your mission to prospective corporate funders if you're going to make a pitch for resources. So do you have the right key messages that you can pivot kind of at the drop of a hat to the various audiences that you're going to encounter while you're managing your organization's outreach efforts? So a lot of good reasons to do a key messages project. One, you're going to enhance clarity and consistency in your messaging. So this ensures that everyone within the organization communicates consistently about its mission, values, and goals in a way that helps reinforce the nonprofit's identity and brand for its stakeholders. Another good reason, efficiency in your communications. So you'll be able to communicate your mission, impact, and priorities more effectively to various audiences, like I said, such as donors, volunteers, and beneficiaries, and the public at large, if you hammer out your key messages. Another good reason to do this is brand building. Consistent use of key messages contributes to building and reinforcing the nonprofit's unique value proposition, distinguishing it from other organizations. This is pretty important, especially if you work in a crowded field where there's a lot of other organizations doing the work or similar work to what you're doing. Engaging stakeholders, very, very important. Whether using marketing materials, fundraising appeals, social media, or public relations efforts, clear and compelling messaging that is tailored to specific stakeholders, beneficiaries, funders, community partners, is critical in keeping people motivated to support the organization's mission and its overall goals. And then again, crisis management. So key messages provide you with a ready-made framework that's consistent for communicating with stakeholders and managing the narrative during times of crisis, along with addressing concerns, correcting misinformation, and protecting your brand and its reputation. So a good example of some whys you could focus on here in your project would be something like, maybe you are one of those nonprofits that is working in a really crowded space where there's a lot of organizations doing similar work. That's a potential threat to your organization's brand. You can make sure potential funders and partners understand what sets you apart from the pack. What is your organization's unique value proposition or special sauce, so to speak? Creating a set of key messages with a messaging copywriter or storytelling expert that you can tap into across all the media that you use, whether it's email, social media, pitch decks for asking for resources, or even grant applications. Obviously, very important. This is really relevant for pretty much every nonprofit. So you'll definitely want to think about those key messages if you don't already have a cache of them ready to go. And then the final project I want to pitch to you all is, again, a type of another evaluation project. So a program evaluation project. So how do you know if a program you are running is really effective in supporting your mission? How do you know whether or not a program could be improved? Is there a mechanism for participants to give feedback? Can you demonstrate to funders and community partners that they're getting the bang for their buck? How do you know if a program could be expanded? These are all the types of reasons nonprofits should be evaluating their programs, not just running them and hoping for the best. So how are you currently doing this at your organization? And if you aren't, definitely think about doing it or start planning for implementing some kind of program evaluation process. A lot of good reasons to do something like this. Transparency. This helps nonprofits demonstrate accountability to their stakeholders, including donors, funders, and beneficiaries, and the overall community that they're involved in. It also helps you make improvements to programs. Find out what's working well and what isn't. By identifying strengths, weaknesses, and areas for growth, nonprofits can make informed decisions to enhance their program effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability over time. It also helps you make data-based decisions. So by basing decisions on data and evidence, nonprofits can optimize program strategies, activities, and outcomes to better meet the needs of their target populations and achieve desired results. It helps with resource allocation. This gives you crucial information that you might need to allocate resources strategically by identifying programs that are the most effective and impactful. It also helps with stakeholder engagement. Including stakeholders in data collection, analysis, and interpretation can ensure that evaluation findings are relevant, credible, and ultimately actionable, leading to better buy-in and support from program improvement efforts from stakeholders. It also enhances the brand by showing how you are responsive as an organization to your stakeholders. And then finally, demonstrating impact. This is especially important, in the area of fundraising. Program evaluation provides evidence of the impact and outcomes achieved by nonprofit programs beyond just their outputs or activities. This helps ensure funders and supporters know that their resources or time is being really well spent. So a good example of how to leverage a project that helps with program evaluation would be something like, maybe your organization has a lot of feedback surveys from program participants, but isn't really doing anything with them. Or maybe you have a lot of data over the years about a program, but no one has taken the time to sit down and organize it or create metrics that the data could be judged against. So think of this type of need like a performance management project, but for a program rather than a specific team member. So program evaluation, definitely something critical to think about if you haven't already. So now that I've gone over some of those underutilized skill sets and sessions and projects that you could use, I want to really quickly touch on, again, Taproot Plus and get you prepared for pitching one of those sessions or projects, or maybe another type of session or project that you want to engage a skill volunteer on. So when you create a Taproot Plus account and navigate to the place where you're ready to post a session or project, there's some specific things I want to call out really quickly when you're making a pitch for a session or project on the Taproot Plus marketplace. So consider these best practices to think about when you're actually going to pitch that opportunity that we're going to take to the marketplace and start encouraging skill volunteers to apply for. So when you get to the portal where you're going to create a session pitch, we're going to ask you about the basic categorization of the project, what the ultimate goal, the session, what the ultimate goal of the session is going to be, whether it's brainstorming or diagnosing. And then we're going to ask you to write up a short paragraph detailing what you want the session to be about. What we recommend here is to try and stay focused. Those hour-long sessions can go by pretty quickly. So you'll want to make sure that your session is really centered around a core question or challenge or issue. You'll also want to clarify the ultimate goal of the call. So just writing out, at the end of this call, I want to have a better understanding of blank, or I want an answer to this question. Or I'd like a set of 1 to 2 or 3 ideas about how to tackle a certain problem. And be as specific as possible. So the more focused you can make the ultimate goal of the call, the ultimate end state you want to be in, what do you not know now that you want to know at the end of the call, the more compelling it's going to be for a skill volunteer, and the more likely it's going to be for them to pick up that session with you. So this is usually 3 to 5 sentences or a short paragraph detailing your goal for the call, what your core question or concern is, and the main kind of skill area you're looking to tap into. Now, when you get ready to post a project, you'll see that this section is a little more built out. We're going to ask you for some more information. And really, the kind of core part of pitching a project is these 3 prompts that you'll see that you're going to provide answers for. So each one of these prompts that we ask, and your answers to it are going to be compiled into the overall project post that we're going to create its own special landing page for, and then boost out on the Taproot Plus marketplace. And then we're going to start encouraging those skill volunteers to apply to your project based off of that project description you create. So these are the 3 prompts that we have up on the project submission page. First, we're going to ask you to describe the project you'd like the skill volunteer to complete. This sounds simple, but some really good things to think about here are, again, clarifying the concrete end goal of this project. It's really not good enough just to come in here and say, we need help with marketing. Well, okay, that's a massive kind of skill area. You're going to need to drill down a lot more. A really good way to think about this is filling in the blank at the end of the sentence. At the end of this project, the skilled volunteer and I will have created blank. So it might be, a program evaluation process, that focuses in on actual quantitative metrics about these 3 programs that we run and creating a dashboard to kind of measure their success or something like that. You want to ask for something very specific. Make the deliverable as clear as possible. Usually projects should aim to focus on a core a core skill set. So again, if you have larger goals or initiatives, you could definitely tackle those with pro bono support, but you might want to break them down into more discrete types of projects that you tackle in sequence. Secondly, we're going to ask you to create a compelling pitch to attract volunteers to your project. What that means is you're going to take that ultimate deliverable that you just described and link it back to your nonprofit's mission. This is important because skilled volunteers oftentimes are reaching out to you because they care about the mission of your organization. Maybe it's a problem that has affected them personally or is just near and dear to their heart. And getting them motivated to help you do this project based off of your mission and how this project is going to help move your mission forward is really, really critical. So link, this project back to your overall mission. How does creating your first annual report that you need graphic design assistance with ultimately help end homelessness in Seattle, or whatever the mission of your nonprofit is actually? And finally, we're going to ask you, what preparations have you made for the project? What pre-work have you done? How do you plan on implementing the project once it's complete? This is really, really important. Skilled volunteers are going to want to know what kind of resources you already have ready that are going to make this project a success. So, for example, if it is a data analysis project, do you have the data scrubbed and ready to go? Is that already done? So go down a checklist and figure out, okay, what are they going to maybe need for this project that I need to ensure them I already have finished so that we're ready to actually jump into this project and hit the ground running. And considering including information about the implementation plan you have for this project is really important too, so that the skilled volunteer knows that the deliverable they create for you, whatever it might be, is not going to just collect dust on a shelf somewhere or turn into a paperweight. That can oftentimes be a great motivating factor for a skilled volunteer to reach out with interest in your project. And then you'll see at the top of every page that you go to pitch a new project, in the upper left corner, you'll actually see a drop-down menu where we have available templates of projects. So these templates are basically form language that we actually help fill out some of those prompts that we give you on that project submission page. We'll provide you some form language that you can use. Sometimes, nonprofits don't necessarily know what jargon they should be using or just need help describing their need. And there's a few dozen of these types of templates that you can use. And what I love about them is they're customizable. You can edit them. So you're not locked into that language. You can lean on it if you want, borrow from it, edit out what you don't like, and include what you do. So here's some available project templates that are tapping into skill areas that are underutilized. So recruitment strategy, stakeholder research projects, pilot program design, key messages development, like we went over earlier, and organizational chart development. Again, tapping into those evaluation, HR, and marketing skill sets that are maybe a bit underutilized on our marketplace. And that really brings us to the end of the information I wanted to share with you all. Like I said, I want to give enough time here to answer any Q&A questions that might have come in, and make sure you know where to go if you have more questions. If you do have more questions for us, you can always reach out at help@taprootplus.org for more information. We are also going to send you all a follow-up email with some more information, including the link to where you can watch this webinar if you weren't able to make it. You could respond to that email as well if you're like me and you think of like brilliant questions at 1 a.m. like a day later and need to come back. We are reachable. So you also find that on every page of Taproot Plus in the lower right-hand corner, there's a need help widget. You can also reach our help desk there and our knowledge base that gives you a lot more information about how our programs run. So I've got some good question submissions here that I want to go over and make sure we tackle online. So a great first question here is, how long after a project request goes unanswered should you wait to submit another request? Yeah, so this is something that's really helpful to clarify. So if you post a project and after about 2 weeks, for whatever reason, you've gotten no interest, there haven't been any takers, you don't see any applications that have come in, we definitely like to hear from you about that. There's some strategies we might be able to deploy to kind of shake the tree a little bit, so to speak, and see if we can get this project in front of the right people. Maybe figure out other ways to get applicants towards your project. So you don't necessarily have to resubmit the project. But definitely reach out to us either at help@taprootplus.org or respond to our follow-up email directly, because I actually do one-on-one sessions with nonprofits as well. So if your project is having trouble matching, I'd be happy to have one of those one-on-one sessions with you. If there's anything we need to change about the project post, or discuss kind of some strategies that we can use to get your project in front of more people, I'd be happy to do that. I just need to kind of get eyes on your unique project and take the time to look it over with you. So we'd like to hear from you. If for whatever reason you haven't heard back from anyone about your project post, there's some extra things we can do if I have the time to kind of drill down on it in a one-on-one with you. So I encourage you to do that. Someone also asked if I could restate the 4 broad categories of pro bono service that we facilitate work in. So yes, the 4 kind of broad skill areas are marketing and communications, information technology, business strategy and finance, and HR and leadership development. So at a very broad level, if you're looking for a skill set that falls under any one of those categories, you could use the Taproot Plus Marketplace for that. We know the phrase pro bono is obviously very associated with the legal field. So I'd like to clarify at this point that legal pro bono is actually one of the types of pro bono that we do not facilitate. So we already think our partners in the legal field facilitate and have a lot of infrastructure that does that very, very well. So we're very happy to reference you over to them or hook you up with those resources, but we don't facilitate any legal pro bono. Like I said, they do that already. The legal professionals do that already very well. Yeah, and another great question. What about smaller nonprofits? Needing capacity building grants for nonprofits. Yeah, so I think all nonprofits, whether they're very small or a lot larger, can use pro bono at any time kind of in their journey. With smaller nonprofits, if you're just starting out, you can definitely use pro bono projects and sessions. But you might want to kind of just dip your toes in the water first, with maybe a smaller, more discrete kind of project. So you get the feel for kind of managing a project with a skilled volunteer. I know this person, it looks like, asked about grants for small nonprofits. So grant writing and grant research is easily one of the most competitive skill sets in the pro bono world right now, meaning we have it in very, very high demand from nonprofits for very obvious reasons. Everyone needs a good grant writer, but there's just a really limited pool of people that are giving that skill set back on a pro bono basis. So if you are really interested in grant writing, I highly recommend, cultivating as many avenues that you possibly can for that. We'll never discourage you from posting that as a skilled volunteer opportunity on our marketplace. But I also want to just be honest with you about expectations. It's a very competitive field right now for grant writing. There's also things you can do that aren't necessarily grant writing projects, but that could enhance your ability to do grant writing. So, for example, those key messages or projects that have to do with finessing language and copy and editing, those are also types of projects that could enhance your own ability to do grants that aren't necessarily explicitly grant writing projects in and of themselves. And someone asked about, just broader capacity building. They want to onboard, an executive director, but they don't necessarily have funds for salaries. This is definitely, in particular, something that kind of falls under the broader the broader fundraising strategy kind of field. There's a lot of different types of projects you could tackle that could enhance your fundraising efforts. Something I always like to say is pretty much any project could be a fundraising project, depending on how you're using that deliverable. If you want more information about pro bono projects that speak to fundraising, in particular, it gives you ideas about types of fundraising projects that you could embark on. Definitely respond to our follow-up email or reach out to us. We actually have created a catalog that's especially for fundraising projects. So it'll give you ideas about the types of pro bono projects you could use for fundraising in particular. So if you just reach out to us and ask us for that catalog, we'll be happy to send it over to you. Another great question. If we're not doing any legal pro bono, do we do CPA or accounting pro bono? Great question. The answer is yes. So that falls under the business strategy and finance section. We do have accountants and CPAs in our pool that offer that kind of help. People do get help on their 990s or, doing an audit for the first time or any kind of financial analysis. If you are looking specifically for a CPA, when you write up that project description, make sure to actually call that out, that you are looking for a CPA in particular. It is also one of the skill sets that we'll check off for that project when we review the projects when they come into us and post them on the marketplace. Another great question, how do you give feedback to the volunteer after they have created something for you, either to improve the project or do it differently? So this is a really great question because it speaks to project management. So ideally, while the project is ongoing, we recommend as a good project management practice to budget in time for rounds of feedback as you're going along. When you do match with a skilled volunteer, you'll actually see on Taproot Plus itself that we link you up with a cache of resources. One of them is our crash course document in basic project management for pro bono projects that talks about instituting rounds of feedback so that you're giving feedback throughout the duration of the project itself. But after the project, there will be opportunity to provide direct feedback for the volunteer. So you'll actually get a feedback survey. And if you have special feedback for the volunteer, you could share that in the feedback survey and we will share it with the volunteer as well. So there is a space for feedback at the end of the project. If you think they did a good job, but they could have improved on this area or that might arm them with that information in the future for their next pro bono opportunity. Yeah, and I know there was a question that also came in about registering for the first time as a 501c3, in the United States. So as a baseline requirement for nonprofits in the United States that want to use Taproot Plus, we do require them to be 501c3 already or have fiscal sponsorship that is confirmed in writing, in signed writing, from another 501c3 institution. So if you are not a 501c3 nonprofit, you can use Taproot Plus if you're able to provide evidence of fiscal sponsorship from a confirmed 501c3 institution. So if you are trying to get your nonprofit up off the ground and you're not a 501c3 yet, you could still access pro bono support, but I wanted to clarify that baseline eligibility. Also, public institutions are eligible to use Taproot Plus as well. So your local library, for example, or even a school could actually get pro bono support through Taproot Plus. We are available to public institutions. And looks like those are most of the questions that came in. I know we're a little bit over time. Some of you probably already dropped. But I just wanted to, again, thank everyone for being here. I hope, whether you're brand new to Taproot Plus or already kind of know about it, you learned something new today about Taproot or skilled volunteerism in general, or maybe you just got some good ideas for potential projects you might want to tackle somewhere down the line that you didn't think about before, or had an aha moment and realized that, this is an area of opportunity you need to go down. So we'll be in touch with that follow-up email, like I said, where you could reach back out to us if you need further resources. Just let us know, and we will get back to you. Thank you so much for being here today and being so engaged. We got some really good questions as well. But without further ado, have a good week, and we'll hope to see you online. Bye.